Louise, can I start by asking you, who or what was the catalyst for your interest in fashion?
Two things really, a who and a catalyst. I lived in the middle of nowhere. My mother luckily bought Vogue and was quite stylish. And you had to make your own clothes because you couldn't get to a shop. So the three things combined meant you had the skills and you had the dream, because of course Vogue at that time was full of Janice Dickinson, who did not look like she looks like now. In fact, my wall was covered with her. And of course Jerry Hall, Anthony Price, people like that, Marie Helvin, they were all in Vogue. And it was another world that if you lived in the middle of nowhere, you didn't have access to.
And was it the actual idea of fashion that inspired you, or was it the actual clothes?
I don't think there was an inspiration, quite frankly. Luckily, I was good at art. In those days, you had art teachers that encouraged you. You also had grants, of course, that meant you could go to college without much worry for you or your parents. And I was advised very early on to go to college. It was accepted you went to college in my family in that time. You went to college to do something you were good at. You didn't go to college to study history if you'd struggled to get a B at A-level in it, which I thought was quite good advice myself. So that's why I went to fashion college. I did have a slight blip where I was going to trundle off and study business studies because it was near a lot of nightclubs, but my father did take me out into the garden and say, in his advice, he thought I should take my place at St Martin's and put the nightclubs and a certain type of men to one side. So we thanked him.
So when you applied to St Martin's, was it a huge risk, do you think, for you to get in?
No. A risk how?
Well, because obviously, St Martin's has this reputation of there's very few places and a lot of people applying.
I don't think it did then. I think back in the 80s, it was considered the best art college then. And, but I suppose if you thought you were the best, you applied for the best. Which slightly goes against what I might say later to some of your questions that I've had a quick look at. You were encouraged to, and I hope that happens today with art teachers and foundations, that if you're good, you apply, hopefully, for the best colleges, which is what I did. Obviously, I wanted to go to London. At that point, there was no point studying fashion if you weren't in London. It's where everything was happening. While I was studying, that was when Yoji and Com showed in Paris, which was 81, a whole seismic change in fashion happened. You had the club scene and everything. So it was paramount to get to London.
And did you ever think that you would never get into St Martin's?
Well, yes, because in those days it was quite shambolic, almost like today actually. So several people I knew applied, and they certainly heard before I did, but it transpired they'd applied for different pathways. So they never got round to the women's wear pathway till last. So you did think, oh Christ, I haven't got in. But I didn't, I don't know, it was a different time, I think. It wasn't so earnest.
Okay. And would you describe yourself as a talented student?
Well, obviously, because I've just said the best apply for the best. Well, no, I didn't think was I a talented student? Not compared to students today, no. Okay. But was I the best of where I came from? Yes. Okay. Could I peg what my faults and what my best qualities were? Yes. I would hope that students today can do that.
When you went to St Martin's, was the expectation different to the reality?
Was the expectation different to the reality? Well, there was nothing there.
In terms of what?
Anything. I don't think we had desks. Okay. But it didn't matter. Okay. Because it was about the people. It was about us as a core group of people. It wasn't really about the tutors, because I think that time has very much changed at St Martin's. I think there's a lot more tutors now and it's a lot more focused. But it didn't matter, it didn't enter into it. And I have to say it didn't enter into it because, of course, we weren't paying to be there. We had grants, and I know I'm obsessive about this, but that devolved a lot of freedom to people to take a risk, to have an experimentation, to bum out for some weeks, basically. There was no pressure. It was you arrived, and therefore you were glad you'd got there, and therefore you did work, and you had critiques, and you had things that you had to aspire to, but basically you took risks and you made mistakes, which is part of growing up. And of course that has somewhat gone now when students are accruing huge amounts of debt, feel an incredible amount of pressure, and have a terrible need to succeed instead of letting life happen.
When you think about your tutors who taught you then, do you compare them to how you teach now?
No.
Why not? What's the difference?
Because, I mean, it was totally different. I mean, I obviously run the MA fashion course at St Martin's. I have upwards of 60 students per year across 5 pathways. When I was at St Martin's, I think there was 12 in the year. So it's a completely different, it's just a different ball game. And as I say, the students are far more demanding. You know, they're now paying. I mean, you know, we had, as I keep reiterating, like a stuck record, we had grants. We weren't financially paying, so therefore the mantra of the Tony Blair years, I believe, was that a student became a customer. Kiss of death in my view, but you know, they're a customer and they're a paying customer, and then we must keep the customer happy. And sometimes in education it's about making the customer incredibly unhappy, unfortunately, but that doesn't really bode well in the structure of education now, because it seems about all making the customer happy.
Do you think the experience that you have then is totally different from the experience that the students have now?
Yes. No, because it hasn't changed in the fact you have to learn. The work is very similar, except the outcome expected is much higher. You know, there were like I said, accidents happened, and the industry wasn't as demanding, and it wasn't as quick, and it didn't expect somebody to churn it out at the level they have to, like 6, 7, 8 collections a year. So it's a different pace, I would say, to the course. And because of the expectation, because the course does show in British Fashion Week and is the only one to do so, that's an added pressure on the students. We also showed in British Fashion Week when I graduated from the MA, but somehow it wasn't quite as professional, shall we say. People still tripped up on the catwalk, and you know, not all models were professional, and it was much more art school, shall we say, and that's kind of been eradicated in the final showing, that's the sign of our times.
In terms of when you were at college, what sort of designer would you say you were? Could you describe...
Lazy.
Why were you lazy?
I spent a lot of time at home watching Isaura the Slave Girl, which I think was on a B channel, a Brazilian soap opera. And my father would phone in weird times of the day, because of course I'd been out all night, saying why was I at home, and putting the fear of God into me. But I luckily lived with a very close friend that was a really A-class student, and he'd be able to come home and sit in the armchair in my bedroom while I reclined in bed, giving me the full rundown of what had happened that day and if I'd missed anything. So if I had to go in pronto, but I was the kind of person that could deliver on a deadline. I didn't have to be there every day toiling away. I mean, I do have that problem with students at the minute, and again, I speak only for the MA, I'm not talking about the BA, where they come in and it's like working in McDonald's, they toil away, and there's no point, because fashion is about toil away at getting the skills, but you've got to go out and you've got to embrace life, and you've got to find that magical moment, that thing you see, and you're not going to find that just by coming in by rote. So I thought it was okay to watch Isaura the Slave Girl. But I had the skills that when I had to deliver, I could deliver. That means I could cut the pattern, or I could stay up all night drawing.
Okay. And what sort of designer were you in terms of aesthetically? Were there certain things that informed your design handwriting?
No.
No?
Not really. I mean, we liked the Japanese, but we didn't copy them.
Okay.
No, we didn't copy them. Things changed quite quickly at that period. I mean, obviously, fashion's always looked backwards since the 60s, I would say. you know, up until the 60s, as Rudy Gernreich said, you know, people thought the moon existed, so everything was new. Every decade, something new came. Once they got to the moon and realised it was just lumpy and there was nothing much exciting there after all, and there wasn't a space station, everybody started looking back. But in the 80s was a period where it felt new and different. You didn't feel you were repeating things. There was punk, there was Vivienne Westwood, there were, you know, Buffalo, everything happened. So all that informed what you were doing, but fun, yeah. I think you just designed.
And when you left college, how did you feel about the transition from being at college to working as a designer?
There wasn't one.
Okay.
We just went. I got a job straight from the catwalk. Somebody came backstage. Hey ho, those were the days. And I went to Italy. And then Italy at that time was a great training ground. You know, all the design houses had lots of English graduates, and you learnt a certain way, and a lot of those people are still in the industry at all levels.
So when did the decision come then to move more towards education?
There's been no decision in my life. It's all been tragic, non-plan, unlike people today that have sort of career plans. This is very introspective. I feel like I'm on Michael Parkinson. The decision came quite simply. I was travelling all over the world. I was working for denim companies. I had a child. Most people from St Martin's give back. They go back. They give talks. They part-time lecture. I was a part-time lecturer there, and it was a perfect job at that point because you had long holidays, so you could be with your son. They changed that though, so now you don't have long holidays, of course. And so that's why I went into teaching.
And do you think it was the right decision if you reflect back on it?
What, now, age 50?
Yeah.
I don't think you can look back. I mean, it is what it is. I've had a great time. I mean, I did leave at one point to go to head up Donna. I missed the youth at that time. I think it's a privilege to be amongst youth. I've said that. I mean, it's hell, and it's a privilege. I mean, it's definitely hell. You know, the idea that people that I teach are like they are when they leave, when they come, is so Freudianly fucked up, for want of a better word, because they are not. And it's really hard and it's really grueling, and it's amazing the amount of people in the industry that don't understand that. They think they come like that. They miss the whole point that they're there to learn, we're there supposedly to teach, and the whole process is agony. And they only become people you'd even like to sort of say hello to when they leave. Because at the whole point they were there, they were nervous, usually morons, quite frankly.
Just going back a bit, when you mentioned you were working at St Martin's and you left to go and work at Don Karen for 2 years. Was that a huge decision to do? No, not really. Like everything. I mean, I mean, people will deny this, but there was a seismic change in education at the time, whereas if you were a doer, you were considerably out of favour. It all became research-led, it became research-funded. Huge swathes of people that were in education were got rid of at that time, and researchers, in inverted commas, were brought in to teach and lead courses so that courses could accrue points, and by accruing points you accrued money from the government, which would be boring to anybody else, but that's fact. So I sort of got, as I do many times in life, I get incredibly angry, incredibly passionate, and thought, right, if that be the case, I'm going back out into industry. And off I trolled. And then I trolled back again. And how was it coming back after being...
Exactly the same. I suppose my people that I work with, because of course the MA, I've always worked with the same people for a long time, Fleet Bigwood, Jane Shepherd, Julie Verhoeven, Peter Jensen, Tony Tester. They said I came back much more driven and focused on fitting. You know, because when you're at Don, you have the luxury of proper models. You fit all the time. It was very much about fitting, draping. So I suppose that did. I mean, it's a good shot of professionalism. I think the course probably jacked up a gear at that point because you had certain demands that you thought the students should enter. And in fact, funny enough, I was telling Albert this the other night. A student that works for him that left this year came back to obviously use the library but visit the course as well. Luckily, they do come back. They're not all traumatised. And he said, God, I said, how is it? And he said, no, I found it really easy because you run the course like Albert runs the studio, which I felt was a great honour. And like he said, there's only one way to do it. So I don't run it as a course, I run it as a design studio, and that's why I consider myself a design director that happens to know about education. That's how I've always run it. I think that's why the students find it quite difficult at first. But it's only an 18-month course, so I don't quite understand why they think they can deliver work that's absolute crap to me. But in 18 months they'd be supposedly working for Albert or somebody, so what's the difference? You're always meant to do your best at the point you're seeing the people.
So that leads on to my next question. So you consider yourself more of a designer than an educator?
I've always considered myself a design director. And it's only in the last year since I had to actively fundraise for St Martin's, and I realised how little people knew about education or what had happened to education in this country, the art schools, and the cuts that had been made to them and the way they had to operate, that I considered myself actually, no, maybe I am an educator, because I felt quite passionately about it. About the struggle students have, the amount of people that don't realise that the grants have gone, the amount of people that say to me, God, if I never got a grant, I wouldn't have gone to art college. And you think, well, don't you read the papers? You know, this is a long time they've been gone. So in that sense, I think I'm an educator, because you then realise, obviously, everybody watching this will probably go on Twitter and say, we hate St Martin's, they're always in the news, because invariably that happens. But it's not just about St Martin's, it's the whole art schools in Britain and what they produced, and a whole sector of society they supported and catered to. And without education, of course, you don't have society, but education has faced cuts for years and years and years now, which has created an added demand both on the staff and students.
You know, a lot is written about you in the press, and you receive Okay. You right, Louise? Doing very well.
It's freezing in here.
It's freezing, my hands are cold, yeah. Are we online now? We're not? Oh, yes, we are. Okay.
Well, that's good. We didn't say anything bad.
Are we okay for time? A lot of, you receive a lot of press, Louise, and a lot is written about you, and journalists like to paint this picture of you as being very outspoken, quite fierce with your students, very demanding, almost aggressive.
Surely not.
Apparently so. But how does that make you feel?
So I think about it for about 4 minutes, get enraged, and then I move on to the next thing, because I'm always so busy. I don't really think about it that much. I lead quite a boring life. Go home and lie on the bed, usually, exhausted. It's best not to think about it. I mean, what I tried to do was, basically, St Martin's MA, that's what I run, and my name's become synonymous with St Martin's fashion. I mean, obviously, a lot of the students on the MA come from the BA as well. But I tried to use that press for the good of St Martin's in starting the Fashion Fund and trying to fundraise and be proactive. That's the only thing to do. And when I leave or pass away or whatever, it'll move on to somebody else. It always was, before me, the press was on Wendy Dagworthy that ran the BA. So I think it just has to find its place to settle. However, there's no doubt about it. There is a track record there. I don't think they're just writing about me nilly-willy. Also, it's like, it just becomes funny because so few pieces are actually accurate. Okay. They always throw in that I taught Hussein. I didn't. And then if they get that right, they throw in that I taught Giles. I didn't. But I did teach a lot of the others. I don't know. My more concern is not what's written about me, it's that it gives a misconception of the college somehow. I wonder if I would have been put off coming to a place that's written about so much, because of course at the time I came to St Martin's it was almost
not a secret society, but it certainly wasn't in the public domain as much. Therefore, you felt you were going to this, not exclusive place, this place where you might find people like you.
But how do you feel about being seen as almost a celebrity educator for fashion, spokesperson? You know, it's
very poor, because other celebrities seem to make a lot of money at it. I mean, I wouldn't mind if I was a celebrity educator, but you know, I've made a lot of money, but I don't, so I've not made any benefit. I upset a lot of journalists by saying Brad Pitt gets royalties because he's talking about his films. I don't get any royalties talking about St Martin's, then have to make up the time spent.
So you mentioned before about the fashion fund that you've been working on. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, that's basically, the college moved to King's Cross, which is a mammoth building, but due to the cuts in education, the college has very little money, and fashion has a profile and an enormous goodwill within the industry, so we went out into the industry and asked if companies would support the fashion schools, MA and BA, which luckily they did. It was 20 founder donors. I think we had 24 in the end.
And which designers have contributed?
Well, now you see, if I mention some and don't mention others, it'll be terrible.
Okay.
Lots.
Lots of big people.
Lots.
Okay.
I mean, Stella, that graduated in BA, Alexander McQueen graduated from the MA, plus companies. You know, it's terrible, because if I mention some, I won't mention them all.
Okay.
If my iPhone hadn't died today, I could have got it on and read them all out.
And how is that money going to be used?
We don't really know, because we've never had any money before. No, we at the minute it's been designated for extra teaching hours, because that is the thing the students always demand, and also some furniture.
Okay.
But the teaching hours is the first thing it's gone to uphold what we believe in.
Okay.
And on any student surveys, they just want more teaching.
Okay. In terms of teaching, and you know, how would you describe what sort of teacher you are, or educator? Is there a certain, you know, a style that would describe the way you work with your students?
No, because I don't know what other people do, and I've never really been that interested. And that makes me sound really arrogant. I'm so cold now, I'll have to put my hands under my scarf. I'm just very in the moment.
Okay.
I think I'm quite organised, but disorganised. I don't know, I call it retraining. I mean, I've said in interviews before, by the time a student comes on the MA, they've probably been in education since they were 5. That's 20 years. It's longer than you'd be in jail for murder. You've then got to reprogram them, because they've been in an education system where it was all about achieving a mark or ticking a learning outcome. But unfortunately, when you go out to get a job, not many people are concerned about the mark or the learning outcome. They're concerned about the work. Because I always believed that art, college and fashion was a visual medium. And what we have is a lot of students that want to talk a lot about it, but not necessarily do it. Or they've been handicapped by not necessarily having the skills to do it. Or they've done a lot of peer group learning. And yes, I am being sarcastic, because of course peer group learning means you teach yourself. But if you don't know much, how can you teach yourself? So I suppose my style is trying to always rock the boat a bit and get people to think for themselves. But going back to my often repeated mantra, if you came out of jail, you'd get a social worker to rehabilitate you. So it is a bit rehabilitating to say, hang on a minute, you can't turn up late. You can't slump all over my desk. Do you get what I mean? You're going to have to sit up, be alert. I think it's now called PPD, because they do love little words in education. That's personal professional development. So sort of every time I lose it, I sort of say, and that was PPD. So in case the student doesn't know what learning, environment they had that moment. Okay. Of course, why would you say I think I'm aggressive? I don't know. People, of course, my partner says I'm aggressive. So I think teaching is a very stressful job.
In terms of when you're looking to take students onto the course, is it very instinctive when you know that they're right to come onto the MA? Is it separate? Is their personality and their work, or are they always hand in hand?
It's devil's choice.
Okay. What do you mean?
Oh, here we go. I mean, I believe that there's somebody out there that helps people fake portfolios.
Okay.
And the student comes and we select by portfolio and then we do interviews. We don't interview everybody, unfortunately, because we have such a huge application. Again, I talk only about the MA to people that may be listening. I do not want them to get confused with foundation or BA courses. And unfortunately, we then accept people, and they're quite short interviews, and I wish they could be longer actually, but we have so many applicants that it would take so many hours, because I like to be at most of the interviews. And anyway, you know, the staff don't have the time either. And then they get on the course and they can't match that work. They cannot match that work. And at that point, I really hate it, because if it was an industry, you'd sack them. But in actual fact, you're saddled with them for 18 months. And that, I would say that's been more so problem. So I would say it is on the work, but almost less so now, because we have to demand the portfolios. Now it's, we like to see how they work, the truth behind the portfolio, because of course that is how they're going to communicate to us when they're on a course that actually teaches. Because that means they have to have a dialogue with tutors. And of course, as I say, if they want to speak, they should phone the Samaritans. Because I need to see things. I don't want to hear all the time about what they're going to do. And neither would Albert. We want to see what they're going to do. We want them to be able to draw or put ideas down. And so I'm much more interested in seeing that. It's what I call the rough work. Unfortunately, when you ask students to see the rough work, by golly, some of it's very rough.
Okay.
But again, it's, you know, not everybody can do everything. You know, some people can't draw, but they have a great eye for research. Other people can draw, but, you know, can't make things. You know, other people cut, drape. So really, it's not about one thing or the other.
Okay.
Really isn't. And I think the key is, don't be put off applying, either for BA, foundation or MA. I think I hear a lot where people have been told by their teachers, oh, you don't apply there, you won't get in, which is absolute rubbish.
Do you often feel let down by your students?
Oh, all the time, but that's really healthy. They probably feel let down by me.
Okay.
That's good.
Why is
Makes
it
you
good?
bitter and twisted. And
But you don't want to be bitter and twisted.
you get let down. Yeah, of course you're let down. They're young.
Okay.
It wouldn't be normal if they didn't let you down. Anyway, actually, rephrase that. They're not there. Actually, no, I don't feel let down by them.
Okay.
I think they've let down themselves. Because my life is, bizarrely, for the amount of hours I spend with them, it's not wrapped up in them.
Okay.
At all.
Okay. On the other hand to that, has there been a student or students that have influenced you in any way?
No. No.
Not at all.
Influenced how?
Well,
I don't
in
go
any
to
way.
their houses, so I haven't had any
Pardon?
good ideas. I don't go to their houses, so I haven't had any good ideas on interiors.
But have you, because do you keep in contact with some of the students?
Loads.
Okay, so you obviously have a personal connection with them. that
Yeah,
goes beyond-
personal collection, but connection
Yeah.
and collection.
And collection.
I collection them. But have they influenced me? No, because you wouldn't want another student to be like another student anyway.
Okay.
Have I admired some secretly? Yes. You know, profoundly talented,
Okay.
an innate skill, and you don't want them to get swallowed by an industry that
Okay.
doesn't understand them or whatever. But most of them have found their way through.
Okay.
So yes, do I have admiration? Yes.
Okay.
What was your word?
I
Can't remember.
So-
It was a different thing, wasn't
But
it?
are you very vocal with your students in terms of, obviously you're working with them on their collection for the final show at London Fashion Week,
Or trying to.
or trying to. But does your empathy work beyond that? Or do you offer them advice about where they're going to think about working after college? And do you work with setting up interviews for them?
Not in that formal way.
Okay.
I mean, usually people would contact me and I'd recommend who I could recommend. But if I couldn't recommend them, I wouldn't recommend them, because there's a lot of students I wouldn't want to have in my studio.
Okay.
They're psychotic. But then a lot of people would say I'm psychotic too. And that's what they have to learn, don't they? But I mean, they still find their way. That sounds too formalised, but we stay in contact with the students. if they ask my advice, I would give me my advice because I'm sort of unrelated to anything. I don't have anything to gain from that advice, so that it's often they find it not, useful actually to just have a chat.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they know it's sacrosanct and it's not going to go anywhere. Can't believe anybody would find this interesting.
No, it is interesting.
It's like being on Michael Parkinson.
Not as glamorous as that.
I don't know, there's a glass of water. I look as though I've got a very short neck because I'm so cold. I'm all hunched up. Look, I'm like this.
Okay.
I should be like that.
At the recent British Fashion Awards, you got 2 mentions of thank yous from Kim Jones and Mayor Katranzi.
Only 2.
Only 2.
I'm joking.
But how does that, people do recognise the support they've had from you. How does that make you feel? Does it make it worthwhile?
No, don't make it worthwhile. I just think, that's great. That's Kim and Mary.
Okay.
That's nice.
Mm.
I mean, I like them both.
Mm.
Wouldn't matter if I didn't. It doesn't make me feel worthwhile.
Okay.
Fat people don't feel worthwhile, do they?
What about when you...
No, but I mean, I can't get to grips with that I'd go, hey, that makes me feel worthwhile.
No, but...
I thought it was really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, what's even nicer is that Kim has taught on the course for years, free of charge, that he's helped us get things made for students, that he's given his time. That's much nicer and rewarding than a mention. I mean, it did give me a particularly... It was quite good that night, considering I hadn't been invited to the awards by the British Fashion Council until the Friday night and then not to the dinner.
Okay.
So that was quite good, because I was there as a guest of Gap.
Okay. And what about...
But that's nice, sending that out on the internet.
And what about when you...
Only because so many of the, designers are from St Martin's.
Yeah. Okay.
So, to have a representative for St Martin's would be good.
Okay. And how about when you received the OBE, which is a different sort of recognition? Were you surprised or super pleased?
Well, I didn't know I was getting it, so I was surprised when I opened the envelope.
Okay.
I thought it was a tax demand.
Okay.
I ripped it. That means the letter was ripped. That means I couldn't send it to my mother. But hey-ho, I just phoned up, I think it's St James Palace, explained what had happened and asked could they send me another letter so I could send it to my mother, which I have to say, promptly they did.
They did, that's very nice.
Yes, very nice. So, but I've said this before in interviews, so people will be bored. My mother always said it's other buggers' effort, and I think that's true. I think a lot of people that get the OBE, if they analyse it, it's through other people's work, which is a good thing. I'm not negating it, but that's through staff and students and the college in a way.
Okay.
So you can't wear it. You get a really fabulous certificate signed by the Queen in a slightly different colour ink to the Duke.
Okay.
It's a slightly feminine, that's quite well done. The certificate's fabulous.
Okay.
The ink colour is divine colour of blue.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just obsessing with my new tie there. It is interesting actually, because you don't know that bit, do you? Because you don't see that.
Yeah, I didn't get an OBE.
No, but even if you got one, you'd be photographed with the badge. Nobody would know about the certificate.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a bit like being the Knight of the Round Table, and that I think it is honour. I mean, I'm a royalist. I love the royal family, so all that was great. But it doesn't. Again, you don't know you're getting one. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And you're only 50, so what are you going to do for the next 20 years? You're a bit buggered.
Okay. Would you ever consider designing your own collection?
No, because if I had, I would have by now.
Okay. Why would you not want to?
I like working with teams of people and stimulating and bouncing ideas off, and I know you could do that as your own collection, but you certainly couldn't do it now, I don't think.
Okay.
I think the time is different.
Okay.
It's younger, my knowledge is different. I think anybody designing their own collection, it really works when you don't actually know that much, because if you did, you wouldn't do it.
Okay.
You kind of learn on the job. I think it's been proven by people that have worked many established places, then do their own thing, aren't that successful. I'm not going to name names, but people that have worked for Prada and other companies, because you almost know too much and you want it to be too professional, and that kind of rules you out of so much.
Okay. Finally, last question. If you could be somebody else for the day within fashion, who would you be and what would you do?
God. Well, I'd either be somebody extremely rich, and then I'd give a whole load of scholarships to Central St Martin's so that students from all backgrounds could study there, and not just one or two. Or I'd be Guido, because to be a top hairdresser is to have access to every bit of fashion and the people and the shows, and it's although highly skillful and laborious, it's a quicker turnaround than fashion, because fashion is a very, very long, hard process to make clothes for 3D, which of course is why the prevalence in the industry is everything 2D, internet, pictures, blogging, but in actual fact it's a torturous process to make clothes on a body that hasn't changed that much.
Okay, Louise Wilson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.